Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to a special meeting of our General Issues Committee for the 2018 budget. I consider this to be a form of a town hall type of meeting, and I welcome my colleagues on council, city staff, members of the media, and most definitely, importantly, the citizens of our city, especially those that are going to speak here this afternoon. I'd like to call the meeting officially to order. Members of the public are advised our meetings are webcast live by the city, temporarily archived on our website. Other individuals' media may also be audibly and or visually recording the meeting. As well, a reminder that all electronic devices are to be switched to a non-audible function during our committee meetings. Madam Clerk, Mrs. Paparella, are there any changes to our agenda, please?
Yes, through you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. We have added delegation requests, they're not requests, they're actually delegations tonight, 4.8 through 4.16 from Mr. Don McLean, Christine Yako, if I pronounced your name wrong, my apologies, Deanna Elaine, Ryan Plested, Marcia Duncan, Hans Jensen, Ian Borsick, Jeanette Lukasik, and Tracy Smoke.
Okay. Members of committee, with that in mind, move to approve the agenda as amended. Councillor Skelly, Councillor Green, all in favor? Carried. Any opposed? Motion carried. Declarations of interest to avoid conflicts. Looking around the table, I hear none. Approval of our last minute meetings, the minutes of the last meeting of February 16th. Councillor Collins, Councillor Aidan Johnson, all in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried. Public hearing delegations. Now, first on the list we had Sandra Walker from QP Local 5167 wanting to speak to transit budget as it relates specifically to DART's accessible transit. Sandra, you are well, and members of committee, since Sandra was listed first chronologically, but she is willing to let Mark Mindorf to go first, and that's her prerogative because she was listed first. And so she's allowed Mark to go first, and Sandra, you wish to go after Mark then. Okay, so 4.2 becomes 4.1. Mark Mindorf, DARTS, our Executive Director, General Manager of Accessible Transit. Mark, please come down. Now, I want to say for everyone here that's going to present, we have a 5-minute rule for delegates, unless committee, at their pleasure, wishes to extend your time. So, yes, Councillor Aidan Johnson, 1 second. Let me activate you. Councillor Aidan Johnson.
Mr. Deputy Mayor, I expect the delegation to be more than 5 minutes, so perhaps we could move in advance to give him the time he needs. But
okay.
Okay.
Hold it. Let's get off to the right start here. Councillor Aidan Johnson, who I believe is our representative on the DARTS board, has put a motion forward to extend the time.
For this case, given the importance of DARTS to the city.
Is there a seconder to extend the time? Councillor Pearson. So is there any comment to the motion, or let's just vote on it? All in favor of extending the... Okay. Well, my apologies. Councillor Marula, you're activated. Councillor Marula.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. And I have no problem hearing the presentation, but in all fairness, we have set up a special committee for DARTS, and we meet quarterly. They jump through hoops for us, and they already did their budget presentation. I think it's unfair that we're asking them to do it twice, but having said that, we also have Sandra Walker coming back again when she's already presented as part of our official record and transcript. Again, we set up a process in which everyone is invited to. They've already done their budget presentation, but if you want to do it again, and Councillor Aidan Johnson was invited too, he could have been there that day. So I'll listen to it again. And so will Councillor Collins and Councillor Conley, who sits on that committee. But again, I would just hope that people would follow protocol and attend meetings as they're requested to.
Thank you, Councillor Marilla. Well said. Councillor Green, please.
I appreciate it, Mr. Deputy Mayor, the intention or the spirit in which this is moved. And I heard something around a 20-minute presentation forthcoming. I have serious concerns given the fact that we have dozens of people here in a public delegation format with 5-minute limitations. So if we're going to now bump that 5 minutes to 20 minutes for everybody, I think we haven't given fair and due and timely notice to people to be able to present what they want to present within 20 minutes. I think, given the amount of people that are here, we should stick to 5 minutes, and we should allow people to come through, and we should listen to each individual delegation. Otherwise, we're weighing our delegates in a way that presents some with more time to delegate than others, and I don't think from a procedural perspective that's fair. So if we're going to set a standard here now and say that this is 20 minutes, then we should move a motion that it's all 20 minutes, and we can just settle in and be here all night. But I'm happy to limit it to 5 minutes because I think we have heard this presentation in other ways. And I'm really interested in hearing the citizens, to be honest with you, not necessarily, no disrespect to the organizations that are present, but I'm really interested to the public input from the individual residents who've come here today to present. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Green. Councillor Aidan Johnson, a second time, please.
Thank you. And with apologies to Mr. Mindorf, I wouldn't mind hearing 20 minutes about darts. I'm sure there are others in the room who wouldn't mind hearing 20 minutes about darts. But in my opinion, procedural decisions should have a broad consensus around the table in terms of those procedural decisions being fair. So if there's a broad feeling, and I'm hearing it, that a 5-minute rule needs to be strictly enforced on everybody today, then so be it. I'll withdraw my motion. I withdraw my motion.
So Councillor Aidan Johnson has withdrawn his motion. The seconder, Councillor Pearson, has withdrawn. So Mark, we are back to the 5-minute rule for you, leading us all off. And Mark, do your best Reader's Digest version of the darts budget, please. The floor is yours.
Well, actually, what we were, this is, there we go. So in the 5 minutes, I can go through the vehicles because that seemed to be the interest of most of the council in terms of the types of vehicles that we have. So I'm just going to go through the vehicle types, and because as I understand it, I was asked to present some information on budget, but that's not going to be possible in 5 minutes. So I'll go through the vehicles to apprise everyone of the vehicle issues that we're having, which have a big impact on the cost. So this is the MV1 that we have. We have 21 of these, and they have one wheelchair location and a bench seat. This is the picture of the bench seat, and this is the location of the wheelchair spot beside the driver. So the next fleet that we have is the ProMaster, and this shows the ProMaster side vehicle. This is one of the newer vehicles in our fleet. It has a ramp, and we've mounted seats along the wall there. This shows the wall location and the place for one wheelchair. This is the replacement pretty much for the bus, and you can see that the the area for wheelchairs is significantly smaller. This is the van. We've mounted these steps on the side to help with the seniors going into the van. Shows the side seat of the van, shot of the van. This is the bus. Now the bus fleet, well, used to be 70 vehicles. It's now going down to 0. Right now we have 8 of these buses in service. You can see that this is looking inside the bus from the front, and this is from the back. Now the issue we have, of course, is these buses are much wider, and we found that we're having a great deal of difficulty maneuvering inside the bus, so that's kind of the issue that we're having with compared to the space that we have for the MV. So we're running into problems with the efficiencies of the vehicles, not being able to load them as possible. And so you have, I published these slides, so if I would probably go to questions now for the rest of the 5 minutes.
Is that it then, Mark? That's your condensed version. Much appreciated. Of course, more information can come out as members of council may wish to ask questions. And throughout the delegates today, members of committee, I'll allow interspersing of questions and commentary since there's no actual action items. All this information will be taken under advisement as we continue our 18 budget. All right, let's start. Thank you, Mark. And let's start off with Councillor Pearson, please.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. Mark, thank you for the quick presentation. So you mentioned at the beginning that we have 21 MV1s. How many ProMasters and vans do we have?
There's 20? 20 MVs and 21 ProMasters.
And vans?
45.
And we have 8 buses, but they are being canceled.
We have a subcontractor fleet of further 35 vans and 7 MVs once.
Okay. Super, thank you for that and appreciate it. And I apologize, I'm not on the DARTS board. Would have appreciated a little bit more information, but I did read the report over the weekend, so appreciate that. And I know that, a number of issues, as you've raised, has been the vehicles themselves, but it's also the service, and I think one of the biggest things that I hear, and I don't get a lot of complaints, you guys do a phenomenal job out there, trust me. But one of the complaints is, especially in the bad weather in the wintertime, is customers who are waiting, and they're waiting outside, and unfortunately, bad sort of feelings when the driver shows up late, they're half covered in snow, etc. How do we deal with this, or how does DARTS deal with this on an ongoing basis?
Well,
Through the chair, please.
Thank you,
Chair.
Mr. Chairman.
The dwell time is one of the issues that we're dealing with, and the further issue of late cancellations. When we're required to wait 5 minutes at a location, and if the passenger is not available, then that adds to the time of the run. We seem to be more concerned with the passenger getting on the vehicle at the time relative to the passengers that are on the vehicle already or waiting down the line for the vehicle. So we try to get within the half-hour window, and we transfer rides constantly to keep the vehicle on schedule. But in bad weather, it's especially difficult with traffic to stay on schedule.
Thank you. And with that, though, we do let the customers know. It would be a practice, would it not, to let the customers know what protocol is so that
Yes.
they are available, they're out there ready to get into the vehicle?
Yes, actually we have, especially with dialysis, we have now instituted an automatic dial-out line that calls the hospital with the passenger's information within 10 minutes of their arrival.
Okay.
It's automatic service.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor.
Thanks, Councillor Pearson. Ward 15, Councillor Judy Partridge, please.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. And Mark, welcome. Thank you for the presentation. The paper's presentation we have in front of us, are the numbers on the pages lined up with the numbers on your slides?
Yes.
Okay. Could you please go to slide number, it would be number 8, please, that shows the inside of the MV1? There it is, yeah. So, Mr. Deputy Mayor, as you and I have chatted about this before, and Mark, I think you're aware of it, but I have had certainly complaints from the retirement homes up in my area. Concerns, let me say concerns more than complaints. They're just very, very concerned that when they have an outing, first of all, the MV1, which I believe has been used to transport residents, is too small to take all of the residents. So sometimes one bus will show up, it'll be, or vehicle, and it may be a while before the other one shows up. So trying to coordinate transport time to an event is not always easy. But what I hear the biggest concern about is actually accessing the vehicle. I guess, for elderly people who aren't really mobile, some have had to go around the wheelchair. There's been a tripping incident on the elevated seat there that you can see. And so I'm just wondering, are you hearing this from across the city? What are your thoughts and plans to mitigate?
Mark?
Oh, well, through the chair, one of the things that as we've experienced with these are the only vehicles available other than the buses, is the difficulty of working on that narrow floor, and for ambulatory passengers to actually get seated. Some find the elevated seat in the back there a bit of an issue with that step, and so we've installed these side seats aftermarket to have more ambulatory seats. And it is a big problem with the floor being so much smaller. The vehicles are designed, they say, for 3 wheelchairs, but we're having difficulty with 2 wheelchairs. So, but what we were charged with was getting rid of the bus fleet because it was too expensive. These vehicles here are in around 90,000 to 100,000 each, and the buses that they replaced were 200,000. so or 180,000 and thereabouts. So it was never considered that issue of when you send out for large groups, the frequency of large groups is such that it was more cost effective to have a number of vehicles available. But that causes a problem for the homes because they have to staff up these multiple vehicles. So this was something that came to us after we had already made the decision to move to the smaller vehicles.
And Mr. Deputy Mayor, Mark has just mentioned the staffing issue, which of course is the other issue. So rather than 1 or 2 staff, we're now talking about 6 staff potentially if there's a large group. So is it your understanding that the RBUCs are on their way out? They're going to be completely...
Yeah, that was the plan.
That's the plan, okay. What was the seating capacity on an RBUC?
RBUCs, they have...
Mark, how about move that microphone just a little closer, please, to where you're speaking?
Okay.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor.
So they get to the... Oh, I'm going the wrong way, sorry. So the RBUCs have the two wheelchair spots in the back and 3 wheelchair spots in the front, but it depends on the size of the wheelchair. We have a number of large wheelchairs, and that sort of cuts down on the side, but the design is for 5, and we comfortably carry 3, 4 wheelchairs on these vehicles.
And capacity in terms of seating?
I think it's 8, 10. It depends on the version of the RBUC as well.
And the capacity for the MV1?
3 wheelchairs, so they say, and how many, and 5 seats. 4 or 5 seats, depending on the design of the ProMaster.
So, Mr. Deputy Mayor, I'm just very quickly doing the math here, and so an RBUC is $200,000. Seating capacity could be 14 at max, is what I'm hearing. Is that correct?
Right.
And the MV1 cost is $90,000. Seating capacity is 6 or 7.
Right.
Hold it, please.
Sorry.
Mark?
I'm sorry. What
If you can't help
did you
from the gallery,
say?
then
Yes.
you can, but otherwise I don't want crosstalk.
What was your question exactly?
Could you just ask that question again, please, Councillor Partridge?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. I appreciate you acknowledging I have the floor. So I was writing down for the MV1, 3 wheelchairs and
No, the
4 to 5
MV1 is
seating.
1 wheelchair. We're talking. The
Sorry.
ProMaster is what I thought you were talking about.
Okay. So capacity of an MV1, which is what
1
you're
wheelchair and 3 ambulatory.
Okay, so 4
4
altogether.
passengers.
Yeah, and so where I'm going with this, Deputy Mayor, is, you know, if we have to send 3 or 4 vehicles to a long-term care facility at a cost of $90,000 each, we're well over that $200,000 mark of 1 RBUC. And I understand that there's a cost difference there, but so what is the answer, Mark?
So-
how are we going to address this?
Okay, well, the issue is that during the 2,500 passenger day, George Broback recognized that very, very rarely do we have more than 2 wheelchairs on of the vehicle at any time. So although there are groups, the group counts relative to the regular passenger loads are very small. So it really didn't make sense to have large buses in that context when smaller vehicles would do. These issues that we're talking about now came out after we made the change and realized that the efficiency of the loading and unloading of the vehicle matters. And that's where we're having our issues with the productivity of the service.
So, Mr. Deputy Mayor, I don't mean to beleaguer this, so I'll wrap it up after this, but what I'm looking for is even if there were no wheelchairs and you were sending the smaller NV1s, you still don't have the capacity. If you had able-bodied seniors at a retirement home looking to go on an outing and you had 15 of them, how are you going to?
Well,
Through the chair, please,
through the chair, servicing the group homes is an issue, but it's a very small percentage of the load of the service. And it was felt that when you need a group coverage, several vehicles would work. the problem is much cheaper than having a large fleet of buses servicing a regular service. So, but the issue is for the group home staff is how to staff that, the several buses.
So, thank you, Deputy Mayor. I'm still hearing there really isn't a solution, and it is a problem with the long-term care facilities and the retirement homes. But I will leave it at that and turn the floor over to others. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Partridge. I see no other questioners requesting. So, Mark, thank you. I should have asked you, Mark, was there anybody here from your board or staff you wanted to introduce?
Yes, I have 5 board members here. There's Shahan Iran.
Just 1 second. Let's see where they are. They want to give a wave where they are? Okay.
And
good.
Bruce Craig.
Good.
And Tom Manzik.
Good. Tom, yes.
Kim Nolan.
Good.
Paula Kilburn.
And Paula. Very good. Thank you, Mark. We'll take a collective motion to receive after all the delegations are done today. Thank you, Mark.
Okay.
Much appreciated. Keep up the good work. Okay, Sandra Walker, Fine President of QP Local 5167, wants to speak to us generally about the transit budget and specifically as it relates to DART's accessible transit. And I know you're the proud representative of the wonderful frontline drivers of the DART system. Sandra, welcome, and the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, councillors, Deputy Mayor, Mr. Mayor. As Councillor Jackson said, I'm Sandra Walker, President of QP 5167, and among others, QP 5167 represents the inside and drivers of DARTs. Just to refresh everyone's memory, over the past 2 years, HSR recommended and City Council directed DARTs to make drastic cuts to their budget under the threat of DART's very existence. The directive was to make the cuts or the provision of work would go out to an RFP. As a reminder, I'm referring to $1 million in cuts in 2016, an additional $1.5 million in 2017. As well, there was the very little talked about financial hit DARTs took when HSR transferred approximately $1.2 million in vehicle costs to DARTs, who now had to work that burden into the annual already reduced operating costs. So today we have a total impact on DARTs of $3.7 million. It is the opinion of the frontline workers at DARTs that HSR has been overzealous in their cutting of budgets, too much, too fast, and no long-term plans laid out. The HSR operates under a comprehensive 10-year plan. It does not seem to be the case with accessible transit. Why is this not the case? This is not equitable treatment of accessible transit users. A 10-year strategy would have been helpful when HSR was directing DARTs to make major fleet changes. In 2016, direction was issued several months into the year to make $1 million worth of cuts and undertake immediate fleet changes after years of having the fleet makeup frozen. Accessible transit vehicles are a specialty market and are a special order. They're not sitting on the dealership lot. Unfortunately, it was reported to Council in 2016 that would only take a couple of months to source and get delivery of new vehicles. And we know that's not a reality. And perhaps speaking to Councillor Partridge's point, had there been pre-planning, had somebody put some effort into searching out the vehicles before the order was put into place to replace the vehicles, we might not be having that part of the conversation today. Drivers and schedules are experiencing unprecedented stress because of the increased focus on picking up and delivering a targeted number of passengers per hour. To reduce costs, schedules are being packed. However, DARTs is still expected to deliver passengers in reasonable time frame and stay on schedule. Keep in mind this is a fixed route service. It is door-to-door. It's not a fixed route service, sorry. It's a door-to-door service, and we deliver people, not packages. Every passenger is escorted to and from their vehicle to their destination or their home. Passengers with accessibility issues move at different speeds than the rest of us. Sometimes passengers aren't ready, and often for very good reason when the driver arrives. Unpredictable traffic, accidents, inclement weather that DARTs has no control over adds to the pressure. This is especially a problem with door-to-door service, as passengers don't necessarily live on Priority 1 roads. Geography, passengers live anywhere from Binbrook to rural Waterdown and from Copetown to the North End. Some passengers may travel a small distance where others are going from one end of the city to the other. With schedules packed beyond capacity in order to stay under the reduced budget, I fear that we will see increases to customer complaints on ride times, late or missed pickups, and increased complaints about staff due to their onerous workload. I worry that the health and safety of our passengers and drivers is at risk due to the rushed atmosphere. As presented by Mark Mindorf in his presentation to the Accessible Transit Committee, DARTS drivers have seen their hourly wage dramatically decrease since 2015. They are experiencing wage decreases ranging from $4.60 an hour to $6.85 an hour. In addition to that, drivers who are expecting to work an 8-hour day are having their trips taken off their schedule, transferred onto an already overpacked schedule, and they're being sent home after only 4 or 6 hours of their 8-hour shift. They don't get paid when they get sent home. A 40-hour per week driver may have lost anywhere between $9,000 and $14,000 of income in a year. And that's only based on the reduced hourly rate. That doesn't include the shortened shifts. We're not talking about people who are earning huge amounts of money. The wages for DART's frontline workers, drivers, as well as the mechanics and maintenance department, reservation and dispatch, are not in line with other accessible transit services or with Hamilton's own HSR.
Sandra, 1 minute, please.
Okay. Just for an example, HSR regular transit operators earn 25 to 55% more than a DARTS transit driver. Caravan drivers in Oakville earn 22 to 53% more than a DARTS driver. So we're asking you to take a second look at the budget for DARTS for 2018 and give more than just consideration to reviewing the budget cuts that have taken place over the past 2 years. Thank you.
Thank you, Sandra. Much appreciated. I see no Sure, you're welcome to. As long as it's respectful, everyone, you're welcome to respond. I see no questioners, so thank you very much, Sandra. Next on my... Well, I looked very carefully at my menu board. Councillor Partridge. Sorry, Sandra, come on back. Councillor Partridge, my apologies.
No, you did, Deputy Mayor. I was a little tardy on pressing the button there to speak. Sandra, I just wanted to say how much I appreciate the videos that you've been sending around. They really are, quite wonderful to see videos of. And could you just give us a little bit of a background on where these videos have come from and who's in them?
So through the chair, QP 5167 is celebrating their 100th anniversary this year, and we talk a lot about the fact that the frontline workers don't really get the kudos that they want, and they are very proud of the work that they do for their employers, and they wanted an opportunity to showcase the amazing work that they do.
That's wonderful, and I will say, I can't speak on behalf of council, but I will say that without our frontline workers, we don't have much to celebrate, so thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Partridge, and some of our frontline drivers are in the gallery up here as well. Thank you. Thank you, Sandra. Carl Andrews. Carl, no stranger to this chamber, always good seeing you. Come on down. And I know one of your passions in this city is about the HSR and its budget. So over the next 5 minutes, once you're settled in with Stephanie, and setting up the computer, that is, the floor is yours, Carl.
Okay. Thank you very much. So the Hamilton Street Railway is broken. In fact, it's more broken than it has been in my lifetime. HSR service levels, by all measures, are far lower than they were 30 years ago, despite population growth. In the 1980s, it carried 31 million riders. It had 50% more buses on the road than in 2014. Transit timing flowed better, and travelers between destinations were easier than buses. They had more room, less frequent pass-bys, less major routes out of service. Staff not as stressed past braking. The B line, introduced in 1986, though not covering as far, certainly was more reliable. The A line, which should be another success in the BLAST network, is a hard-to-access express bus running only at peak periods, not even functioning as intended to move people quickly and easily up the mountain and to the airport. Chronic underfunding of the HSR has led to a decline in ridership, quality of service, and usership in general. Cost adjusted to 2018, the HSR budget was $112 million in 1986. The budget last year for the HSR was $63 million and barely saw a ridership of 21 million. That's 31 million riders in 1986, with a growth in population, a growth in transit ridership across the country, we can only muster 21 million trips a year? I don't think it takes an expert to understand why. In 2015, experts presented a 10-year transit plan to expand and improve public transit. I'm going to put two slides side by side, reports on the 10-year transit strategy before you. The top one in black and white from March 6, 2015 GIC report. The one in color from the most recent budget presentation. It notes you will note the 2015 report notes that levy increases should be approximately 3.7 million in 2019, and all inputs should be over 3 million over the course 3 million a year over the course of the transit strategy. I would also take note it appears a year of funding of our transit has disappeared somewhere from the plan. The original money imagined minus the bus bar needed in an extra capital funding for the 10-year transit strategy was 102 million over 10 years. Where is that money? It appears from the 2018 report that the remainder of the plan years are underfunded, waiting for another level of government to commit. This council seems unwilling to truly invest in the HSR with local dollars, unwilling to take a real stance in favor of true investment in public transit. I wanted to put this slide up quickly to note, ridership across Canada is not flat. Statistics Canada shows a growth across the country as a whole. Take Brampton, who has made substantial investments in public transit and has seen ridership grow by 18%. Now, I'm no expert on public transit. My experience comes from riding the system my whole lifetime, and that knowledge is supplemented by the limited public information this council makes available. But I can tell you personally from a lifetime of transit riding, the HSR isn't just broken, it's on life support. A life support generated by years and years of constant neglect by you and your peers. A view by the city of public transit service, not as a beacon of a progressive modern city, not as a needed service to attract future modern jobs and employment, not as a way to combat climate change, but as a system of last resort, a system used only by those with no alternative. You, as the elected officials, should make yourselves experts, but I know most of you don't ride to that system. To you, I say shame. Finally, I wanted to warn this council. Riders are organized. We're angry. Your platitudes, half-truths, and public investment records in this vital service to our city's future will be judged come election time. The days of treating transit as a system used only by or for citizens who do not vote, are poor or marginalized is over. Your lack of bravery on building the BLAST network, investing real local dollars in a world-class transit system will not be forgotten. Thank you.
Thank you, Carl. I see no questions or requesters at this time, so thank you very much for your presentation, Carl.
Thank you.
Next on the list is Dave Cherkowski. Dave, please come on down. And again, no stranger to this chamber. We've appreciated all your passionate speeches in the past on a wide range of topics, Dave. And today I believe you're here to talk about the overall 18 budget. Next 5 minutes, the floor. Oh,
I wish I could speak to the overall budget.
Yes.
But there's one point in particular that I need to speak to again.
Well, that's fine. Next 5 minutes, the floor is yours. Welcome.
Thank you, Tom, Deputy Mayor. Councillors, you all know me. I'm no stranger to this chamber. I'm no stranger to the budget process, having monitored it for the last 8 or 9 years. I don't want to be here. I don't want to speak to this issue. But for the 4th year in a row, you're going to hear from 10, 15, 20 of us on one particular issue. The HSR. And it's because for 2 decades, there's been a refusal by this council and previous councils to put in municipal dollars. I'm here to ask you to please stop the insanity. We know the result. If there are not municipal dollars, you can't grow it. You put in the provincial dollars, you put in the federal dollars. Why are you waiting and putting on municipal dollars? Please invest municipal dollars. Grow the HSR to what it needs to be. Carl, thank you for your eloquence. He's got all the statistics. There's 10 people behind me. We shouldn't have to be doing this again. There was a 10-year HSR plan. The first 2 years, you asked us, the riders, to pay for it. We did. Last year, we expected you to, and you failed us. Don't fail us again. Thank you.
Thank you, David. I see no questions of David at this time. Thank you, David, very much. Next on the delegation list is Craig Burley. Craig, where is Craig? There he is, yep, coming around. Well, you took the long way there, Craig, to come around that side of the gallery. Nice to see you, Craig, and a fine lawyer in town. You've been here before as well, and appreciate what you bring to the table. The next 5 minutes is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. Councillors, wanted to speak on two items to you this afternoon. The first is very quick regarding LRT, and I want to speak regarding funding for HSR. With regards to the LRT, one thing that I wanted to put in front of Council as you explore the budget for 2018 is to keep the cost of LRT project delays within the Hamilton economy in mind. It's been a key issue. I know I've come back and I've spoken to you a couple of times about it, and I wanted to just reiterate once again that where shortfalls in local funding cause delays or other actions by council in other areas to the overall LRT project, the cost of the local economy of the delay in terms of the expenditure within the city alone of outside funds is $3 million a month to the local economy. $36 million a year to the local economy where the project expenditures are delayed. It's an important principle to keep in mind that the vast majority of dollars spent on the project will come back here, and that it is of critical importance, not just in terms of its impact on the economy can only begin once it is fully realized, the project, but also development will follow along. So there are three tracks, not just this direct $3 million a month in project expenditure, but also further delays to the LRT project will result in delays in terms of investment and in terms of its impact on its users within the city and the expected economic boom that it's going to provide. I just wanted to raise that issue. Next issue I want to speak to is with regards to the HSR. I'm a regular rider. I use it most days to come to work. We've all heard endlessly regarding service issues and the ongoing HSR transit crisis. I want to go back to last year's budget delegations. I want to, and the people that you heard imploring for service funding, for capital funding, for HSR funding, and the eventual decision to put the 10-year transit improvement strategy completely on ice came down to a budget decision. The planned HSR service standard improvements in 2017 that you decided to cut were the addition of new buses, 29 drivers, and 34,000 hours of extra service. And what did we see happen in the second half of 2017? We saw endless complaints. We don't have enough drivers. We don't have enough buses. And what you heard over and over again from us as transit users as we came back to implore you again and again, we don't have enough service. I'm not merely imploring you not to make the same mistake again. I honestly don't think you will. I know you'll be deeply tempted as we get down to March and April looms over us. But what I do want to say is this. I think the city took a tremendous black eye in the second half of last year related to HSR funding. I think if you move to plan to restore the year's missing funding back into the system to maybe get it beyond the crisis point we're in, that would be sober, smart, and sensible planning as you look forward to an election and as you look forward to 2018, 2019, and forward as the strategy moves through 2025. Thanks.
Thank you, Craig. Much appreciated. No requesters at this time, so Craig, I thank you for your delegation and presentation. Next on my list is Ute Schmidt-Jones. Ute, there you are. And Ute has been before us before on a number of issues. Ute, nice to see you again. Welcome. And that's very kind of you as our one delegation from here to support darts. Paula, thank you so much, and Tom again for being here as you make your way out. Ute, please come on down. Take over the podium in the next 5 minutes. The floor is yours. Welcome.
I'd like to thank Council and the Deputy Mayor for the opportunity to speak today. I'm an entrepreneur whose main career focus right now is to successfully market a specific brand to the greater Hamilton community. And I'd like to see Hamilton start doing that with HSR as well. There are a couple points I want to make before I talk about how we can do that. The first is please, please, please do not give up on your single-use bus tickets for HSR. Why? You cannot get a Presto card without an address, and we cannot allow that to happen. So let's talk about marketing. Why do we not market HSR in an innovative and creative way? Why don't we have an intern or a marketing committee, a volunteer committee, working on how to market this community, the HSR, the same way we do other things like heritage or media in our council as well. So here are some suggestions for you on how to better market HSR to your community in ways that won't be massively revenue inducing. One of them would be to create an incentive program with your partnerships, with your local businesses that are interested in stakeholder participation in this project. I suggest something like a weekly hot seat prize donated by a local business that highlights participation on the HSR. It's a way to increase ridership and excitement around riding the bus. I think it could be a really great one-year project to work on this marketing incentive, and I think it would be really neat to have that lovely committee come together to work on things like this. I'm not saying these are the things you should do. I'm saying this is what my entrepreneur's mind comes up with, and I'm sure that your committee of appointed people who are volunteers would come up with some even better ideas. What about getting somebody to write a monthly column in the local media? That includes Snap, The Spectator, Crown Point, North End Breezes, you name it. Once a month, an article about positive HSR experiences. And we can generate that not by people who are involved with HSR directly on the payroll. I'm talking about why not encouraging citizens who ride the HSR to submit articles of positive experiences or positive suggestions and get those in the local newspapers once a month, creating a monthly presence. What about geocaching, creating a treasure hunt, so to speak, in the community that you can only access by the bus, or HSR, sorry, and have treasure markers along the routes here in Hamilton, and if you can, fulfill your cart, your passport of treasures, then maybe a coupon, a prize might be a week's free HSR usage or something like that. What about reaching out to tourism entrepreneurs who like to use the HR as a riding tour? I think of what Stephanie Lechniak continues to do with Haunted Hamilton, which is walking tours of the city. Why aren't we doing bus riding tours of the city? We have some of the most beautiful architecture in this city, and in Canada, I mean, and to have those highlights exhibited and put on display and marketed and supported through sitting bus rides. That would allow people who maybe can't do walking tours to be aware of the greater amenities here in Hamilton. And finally, I suggest using social media as a marketing tool with this committee that you set up, where you can feature a weekly prominent Hamilton business figure, artist, public person who maybe wants to pay a little bit of money for the privilege of having their photo accompanied with a large interview about why they benefit from using HSR regularly. And that could be also put on social media pages. We have lots of massive group pages here in Hamilton. I think of What's Up Hamilton. The BIAs all have fabulous representation. And those articles could be published once a week, once a month, whatever works for you. Let's get this business marketed well so that we see it as an asset, not a chore. Okay?
Thank you, Ute. Thank you. Any questions, comments for Ute? Thank you, Ute, and thank you for that perspective. Much appreciated. Next on my list, the McMaster Student Union is here, and I believe it was to be Ryan Deshpande, but I believe Stephanie Bertolo is here. Stephanie's here, representing the McMaster Student Union, and they want to present on their priorities for the City of Hamilton. And Stephanie, I don't need to remind you, but I'm one of the very few proud members of council that's actually a McMaster graduate. There's a lot of Mohawk folks around here, but I'm a McMaster graduate. But that's not to alter your presentation. You just carry on. Welcome, Stephanie. Always good seeing you. The floor is yours for the next 5 minutes.
Thank you. Okay. Good afternoon, Honourable Mayor, City Councillor, City staff, and fellow Hamiltonians. I'm Stephanie Bertolo, the Associate Vice President of Municipal Affairs for the McMaster Student Union, speaking on behalf of the 23,000 students at McMaster. This year, the MSU submitted its first municipal pre-budget submission, outlining our recommendations to Council for this upcoming budget. Today, I will discuss 3 of our priorities, which we'd like Council to make investments in, which are transit, housing, and bylaw enforcement. As students, we are heavily reliant on transit, and we greatly value our university pass that we have negotiated with the HSR. This year, we contributed $4.6 million to the HSR, representing 12% of the transit revenue. As a demographic, McMaster students are the single largest contributor to the transit system. This demonstrates that there is a mutually beneficial relationship between the MSU and the HSR. In light of this, the City of Hamilton should consider our priorities when determining the transit budget. Many councillors have stated that they will be voting to fund Year 3 of the 10-year transit strategy after a year of delay, and we are thankful for your dedication to improving transit in the city. However, we also ask Council to dedicate additional funding for the HSR to ensure that future crises like the one the HSR experienced last year do not occur again. As we know, 1,830 hours of service were cancelled in October alone. While this number has dropped, the West Hamilton buses are still being cancelled frequently. Failing to address this will inevitably cause students to no longer see the value in their university pass and may decrease our contributions in the future. As a human right, all residents of Hamilton deserve adequate housing that is safe and affordable. However, many students are unable to obtain this right. The current means for inspecting rental units remains complaint-based, which does not effectively solve issues. Because of high turnover, issues are often not resolved. Moreover, tenants are often not aware of their rights since resources are scarce or they are afraid to create friction with their landlord. Moving forward, the MSU believes that the landlord licensing system would be most effective in addressing Hamilton's housing concerns, as it has in other cities across Ontario. The City of Hamilton's Rental Housing Subcommittee asked Council to invest $60,000 to hire a full-time project manager. Council chose to delay this funding to the budget cycle, and the MSU recommends that City Council follow through with this recommendation and add any additional funding necessary to begin the process for a robust landlord licensing system across the city. Recently, Council chose to expand and make permanent the student bylaw program in McMaster communities. As we have expressed before, we are not in favor of this program as a result of the hefty fines distributed, which a number of students have told us that landlords are forcing them to pay. We are also concerned with the increased risk of getting a ticket will cause landlords to raise rent in the McMaster community. Overall, the bylaw program misses the mark on proactively informing and educating individuals. Our Student Community Support Network, SCSN, is attempting to provide that education through targeted, effective interventions and peer-to-peer programming. We believe the City of Hamilton should invest in this program and dedicate funding to restore the truly peer-to-peer and proactive program at a cost of $18,000 for part-time wages and educational materials. This investment will restore a proven, effective program and establish a direct connection between the City of Hamilton's bylaw office and SCSN, providing accountability for the peer-to-peer programming, a close relationship with the MSU, and build healthy relationships with long-term residents. As for effective bylaw compliance program, the City of Hamilton should adopt a restorative justice and mediation program, which emphasizes healing victims and involves citizens in creating a healthier, safer community. Currently, Western University has mediation services, which is jointly funded by the City of London and has received 2 awards for its success. It is used in areas including property appearance, parking, noise complaints, which are the primary areas in which fines are being distributed by bylaw officers in the Westhill area. The MSU believes that these programs are not only more effective than the current bylaw enforcement programs, but are less financially punitive on students. The MSU recommends dedicating 1 full-time staff member to exploring these options within the McMaster community. We hope the Council will consider our recommendations not only for this budget, but in all decisions moving forward. We are confident that by working together, we can make Hamilton the best city to be a student. I'd be happy to take any questions.
Stephanie, as always, thank you for your knowledge and the eloquence of the way you deliver your presentations. The Ward 1 Councillor, Aidan Johnson, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Deputy Mayor, and through you to Stephanie. Stephanie, thank you for the great presentation and for all that you do in the community throughout the year. Mr. Deputy Mayor, I believe you know that Ms. Bertolo is a very active citizen and leader. She isn't just delegating today, she shows up in all kinds of ways all of the time. So it's a privilege to work with her, and thank you for the opportunity to thank her in public. Stephanie, I agree with most of what you've said, almost all of what you've said, and that's saying a lot, I think. I really want to work with you on this idea of doing something like the University of Western Ontario cooperative venture on peer-to-peer mediation. That sounds smart. So I will look forward to speaking with you more about that offline. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Councillor Aidan Johnson. I see no other requesters. Stephanie, thank you so much for representing the University Union. Thank you. Okay. Next on my list, I have Don McLean. Don McLean, who is a strong advocate in our city on many fronts, founded Catch, and has been a citizen who cares passionately about many issues in this city. Don, you're no stranger to this chamber of the podium, and with Stephanie's assistance there, when you're ready, the floor is yours, and you've got the next 5 minutes. Welcome, Don.
Thank you.
Set, Stephanie? All set to go? There you go, Don.
Nope, we're not.
Wonderful. Thanks, Stephanie. There you go, Don.
Thanks very much, Stephanie, and thanks for the opportunity to speak again. I have actually brought with me my phone, which has 5-minute timer on it, so I will try to stay with it. I have an extra control on here, right?
That's my 5-minute time limit up here.
So I just want to comment briefly on the HSR, as you would expect. And a couple of the slides that went up, one of them was this one, which was being presented as a great investment in transit in this city. These are the numbers that were included in the slide. I don't understand why they only go to 2016 and not 2017, but let's look at a couple of things with respect to that slide. First of all, it's unclear what's included in that council investment. Does it include the fare hikes, the provincial gas tax, the forced federal funding to match the federal funding? And what is forced by the highballed ridership numbers that we've worked with. So when we predict high ridership numbers and they don't happen, then I know council or the city has to pick up the missing part of the HSR budget. That wasn't a council decision or really a council investment. It was just forced. It's curious, as I said, that this only goes to 2016, and is it not there for 2017 because there was no investment last year because council decided to bail on it. At face value, a 40% increase over 11 years equals less than 4% a year, and that would still put Hamilton at or near the bottom of municipalities that I compared last year. And this is the chart that I put up last year, and I haven't bothered to update it because as you can see, there's only a couple of London and Hamilton that fell below 4%, even in the 2006 to 2015. So I don't think we're doing particularly well, even though we'd like to pat ourselves on the back. This is another slide from the transit presentation showing rides per capita, and the fact that we're not doing very well on that is quite obvious, but other municipalities seem to be doing considerably better. At the same time, we're told that ridership is flatlining or declining everywhere. That doesn't seem to be anywhere else, according to this graph. Certainly not declining in Brampton or Mississauga, up dramatically in both municipalities despite very rapid population growth, and likely up in Durham and York given their substantial population growth. And just another look at that graph to see. So talking about flatlining and we can't get riders because we are somehow caught in a global problem or a North American problem is simply not true. Performance pass-bys got passed over quite quickly in the budget discussion, but it's pretty disgraceful that we're still up around over 400 pass-bys a month, and that has been in the Maine-Queenston corridor alone, and that has been consistent through 2015, 2016, 2017. So all of the investment that we allegedly are making doesn't seem to be making much difference in terms of actually getting to a point where we can pick up riders. I talked to the former transit chief, Don Hall, a number of years ago, and I asked him, why don't we market the HSR? And Uta gave a very impassioned presentation on marketing the HSR. And he told me, frankly, I can't market the HSR when I don't have a service to pick up the passengers who are already standing at the corner. And we're still in that situation, and it's a disgrace. We still rank last in contributions per capita transit. This bump that ironically was caused by council raising fares, because when we raised the fares, the ridership fell and did not come anywhere near what had been predicted. Ridership is increasing elsewhere, and council has made almost no levy contributions to the HSR in 30 years. More fare hikes mean fewer riders. Fare hikes are the main cause of ridership decline. Comparator cities are seeing higher ridership. There's a failure to invest, and that equals poor performance, and we saw that dramatically this past year. We have an overloaded system. One of the things that wasn't put up in the transit budget this year, but which was there last year, was with respect to how efficient our system is, because we carry more riders per bus, and that's because our buses are overloaded. I'll skip by that because my time is up, I think. I just wanted to add one thing, if I can. I don't know how you turn this thing off now. And that is unrelated directly to the transit budget, but this is just an excerpt from your budget, your capital budget, that never gets public never gets an opportunity to debate because you run it through much earlier before you do this this opportunity. And this problem is one that I know you're struggling with, and I know that's happening in other municipalities as well. Can I suggest, as a simple step, that you ask your staff to explain how we got into this mess? What are the contributing factors so that we don't continue to make it worse? I strongly suspect that sprawl has a lot to do with this. A commitment has been made to infrastructure that our taxpayers are not asked to pay for or unwilling to pay for or can't pay for. And we need to stop getting into this hole even deeper. So I would suggest that you need to do something on this other than simply say somebody else is going to have to bail us out, because that's the only thing I've heard from council year after year in terms of trying to address that. Thanks.
Thank you, Don. I see no requesters, Don, of your presentation. Thank you very much, Don. And next I have Christine, is it Yaku, please? Is that Yashu? My apologies, Christine. Come on down, welcome. Nice to meet you. And the next 5 minutes, once you're settled in there, the floor is yours. Christine Yashu.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Thanks. Hello, Council. My name is Christine Yashu. I am a resident in Ward 6. I am a McMaster alumni and a young professional living in Hamilton. I'm here today to share my experience as an HSR rider, as a rider throughout my undergraduate career and now as a young professional living in Hamilton, and why I believe Council should keep with the 10-year transit strategy and invest in the HSR system. So I began my studies at McMaster University in the fall of 2012, so it was about 6 years ago, and this was my first experience as an HSR rider. As a commuter student, using the HSR to get to McMaster was definitely a struggle. It took anywhere between 60 to 90 minutes, depending on the time I left, and the congestion on the roads, and whether or not that transfer point was missed, to get me to school, versus the 25 minutes it would take if I were to be driving by car. It was a constant joke with my friends from the GTA that I had made at McMaster that their commute would take 1 hour and was significantly faster and over a larger distance versus my 20-kilometer commute being from the East Mountain. This commute can sometimes be longer than that 60 minutes, especially during the evening hours on Sundays when the buses are less frequent. And that also becomes a concern because it gets dark. And personally, I have experienced sexual harassment when riding the HSR and in that transit system, and it's not fun. So it gets longer, it's not very reliable. Congestion during rush hour often puts us behind schedule. The bus is almost always full by the time we reach Main and Dundurn, leaving students beyond that point needing to decide whether they're going to bus, grab a bike, or walk, whether it's rain or shine. I also began using the HSR to get to work, where I worked at Lime Ridge Mall. Lime Ridge Mall is about 3 kilometers from my house. However, it would take anywhere between 30 and 40 minutes to take a bus. Frustrated with how unreliable the transit system was and how much time that would take me, I tried biking to work. Biking is a really healthy option. It was not a long distance and it took almost no time. However, I quickly learned that there was a severe lack of infrastructure in cycling infrastructure in our city. And I quickly learned that this was no longer a viable option for me because I did not feel safe biking to work on our roads. Whether that was to Lime Ridge Mall, and I also tried biking to McMaster University, crossing that 403 ramp is not safe for me. I do not feel comfortable doing that, and that is not what safe cycling infrastructure looks like. So today I work full-time at McMaster and I use public transportation because it is my only option. However, I need it to be a better option as a young professional living in this city. The failure to invest in public transit is definitely impeding my ability to live and age successfully in this city, which I know is the city's mission. I leave my house at the same time every day, but I arrive at my destination at a different time. Thankfully, I'm fortunate that my employer is flexible and that's not much of a problem for me, but I know that not everyone riding our HSR has that luxury and can afford being late to work. The 2 to 3 hours I spend each day commuting could be better used to myself. It could be used to exercise, to volunteer in my community. I love volunteering in my community. Spending time with my loved ones or something else that would be more beneficial to my personal growth and success living in Hamilton as a young professional, but instead I am riding the HSR and waiting for that transfer point. The length of this commute is largely unacceptable to me and for Hamiltonians that wish to work or attend McMaster University or go anywhere else in this city. So I'm asking City Council to follow through with the promises that you made for the 10-year transit strategy to Hamiltonians to help us get to school, get to work, to volunteer, and as a climate-friendly option for the city. Thank you.
Terrific, Christine. Nice presentation. Well done. No requesters of Christine. We're taking that under advisement. Thank you, Christine.
Thank you.
For your presentation. Next I have on my list, is it Deanna Allen? Deanna Allen? Well, of course we recognize this face. Councillor Green used to, and still does, I believe, from time to time work in the Ward 3 office. Deanna, welcome. Always good seeing you. And of course, always good seeing that wonderful pet friend of yours. That's right. Carlin, right?
Yes.
Carlin. Nice to see you again, Deanna. Welcome. Next 5 minutes, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Good afternoon, members of council, and thank you for allowing me the opportunity to speak to you today. My name is Deanna Elaine, and many of you probably recognize Carlin and I from our time spent behind the scenes at City Hall. I'm a resident of Ward 7 and a student at Westmount Secondary School. I'm also a puppy raiser, meaning I volunteer my time to train service dogs. My service dog in training, Carlin and I, are here today to urge you all to increase the City of Hamilton's funding of HSR transit services, further to your commitment to the 10-year local transit strategy to prevent future crises. As a Westmount student, I have observed and experienced bus service issues during peak times wherein multiple buses pass by people trying to get to work or class on time on the 41 Mohawk. It has been a norm in my morning classes that students will arrive late, explaining that the HSR buses were full, late, or did not show up at all. In September, I will be a social sciences student at McMaster University. I will need to take 2 buses from my home on the mountain to reach McMaster, a trip that takes me about 45 minutes, and have very real concerns about buses being full and canceled, concerns that have been stated frequently by the MSU and advocates, including my friend Stephanie Bertolo. I'm concerned that I will have to double my expenses as a student attending McMaster by either moving into residence or into the Westdale area, or by obtaining a driver's license, buying a car, paying for insurance, and paying for parking at McMaster. Should I feel these options are better than relying on transit services, I will still be paying $200 for a bus pass through my student fees. It is, in my opinion, very important that you vote to resume the 10-year local transit strategy and increase funding for HSR services so that Hamiltonians like myself do not have to consider doubling post-secondary expenses to be able to go to Hamilton's own McMaster University. Carla and I are avid transit users. While we have had accessibility issues and concerns in the past, I'm pleased to share that the Director of Transit has personally and successfully engaged and worked to alleviate my concerns. When the bus arrives to get us to school in the morning, it is often packed with students. And while we have been passed by buses before, we are often able to fit onto the bus thanks to our very energetic, welcoming, and friendly drivers. When the buses are this full during peak times of the day, Carlin and I are unable to use a seat on the bus, which is very helpful in keeping dogs secure, out of the way, and successful in this outing. While I am able to board a bus and stand with a service dog in training, I am conscious of the words marking every HSR vehicle servicing Hamilton, fully accessible. When buses are regularly so full that people using accessibility devices like service dogs or walkers would have difficulty in having enough room, I would imagine that people using mobility devices like wheelchairs or scooters will be faced with even more occurrences of buses being too full to accommodate them. When the bus is so full for people using mobility devices to access transit services, is the vehicle still fully accessible? It is because of these concerns that I urge you again to increase funding of our HSR transit services and resume the 10-year local transit strategy so that we may see more articulated buses, more frequent, reliable, and on-time service, and as a result, more accessible transit. When I graduate from McMaster in 4 years' time, I hope to see our city moving forward and getting on board with the BLAST network, which will truly shape our city and my future as a proud HSR rider. Thank you again for allowing me the opportunity to share my concerns with you today, and I hope you commit to invest in Hamilton's future through increased funding for HSR transit services in the 2018 budget.
Thank you, Deanna. Excellent speech. And every time you mentioned Carlin's name, I could see his tail wag a little bit there. So anyways, no requesters or questions of Carlin and Deanna. Thank you, Deanna.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for being here. And as always, Carlin's so well behaved. Okay, next on my list, Ryan Plastide. Am I pronouncing that correctly? Hopefully, Ryan. Is Ryan here? Plastide, okay. Then you know what? We'll hold over Ryan, Stephanie, until the end to see if he arrives later. Marcia Duncan. There we are, Marcia. Please come on down. Always good seeing you, Marcia, and somebody who... Are you taking the long way around too, Marcia? Oh my goodness. You and Craig Burley. Just a little exercise for you and Craig Burley. Oh my goodness. Come on down, Marcia, and always good seeing you. And I know one of your passions is the HSR as well. And I know you're a frequent rider and advocate. So welcome back to the chamber. In the next 5 minutes, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Mr. Deputy Mayor Jackson, members of council, staff, and guests. Thank you for allowing me to speak today. As the city goes forward with budget discussions, I would like to make comment on our Hamilton Street Railway HSR bus system. In 2016-17 and before, many of us came out petitioning for council to commit more budget money to the HSR to improve the system. And I know these petitions were even done long before that. I can still find documents I wrote back in 2007 about costs, 2009 about pass-bys. So it's been a long time. And then this past October 2017, there were many buses canceled. It sounds like it was partially due to management using volunteer overtime by drivers as a management tool. What other company would use this kind of strategy to get the work done? It doesn't make any sense. There should be adequately staffed buses and alternative coverage by drivers on standby so that you don't have to stress out the drivers by expecting them to work overtime. I know some are asked to keep driving after their scheduled time is finished. There should be backup drivers stationed in the area, maybe at McNabb Terminal for this type of situation. Holy Dinah, their job is stressful enough. For example, I catch the bus on Sundays from East Hamilton to Westdale to go to choir practice between 12 and 12:30. As it travels down Maplewood and Delaware, Stinson, it starts picking up quite a few passengers. Standing room only, a couple of wheelchairs, a few walkers, some strollers, and most riders are going to the West End. I might add that the driver in that situation I just described was awesome and handled the situation like a true professional, as those I have encountered do. But how is any driver to be able to stay on time doing all the things necessary for safe and efficient transport of passengers and drive and deal with the stress of staying on schedule? When are they supposed to be able to go to the bathroom? When they're late getting to the end of the line and have to get back en route? Or they have no time during their trip to do that. It's not right. How can someone not get stressed out because of that? There are signs posted in the HSR buses by the HSR in the city that they've made improvements. More buses, more drivers. That's great. But what of it? The situation I just described was just a few weeks ago. City Council claims commitment to public transit. It's been over 10 years that problems existed. In my opinion, improvements have been incremental, and some of it's just as bad as in the case noted above with the poor driver having to deal with the packed bus. Some of the proposed improvements like Wi-Fi on board, USB charging stations are lovely notions, but to me they're just distractionary spending. I would just be happy for buses to be on time, get a seat, and have a driver who is respected and treated fairly by management, and as an aside, who is asked to try out and drive buses before the city purchases them. Yes, I'm referring to the short buses numbered 1500, 1600 group. That's my own pet peeve. I realize there's a lot of constituents who don't give a rat's petunia about busing and public transit. And some would love to have no public transit at all so they can drive freely. But we all know that notion is not good for those who can't afford vehicles, or those of us who have an environmental conscience, or those who actually just want to ride the bus because, believe it or not, they find it more convenient. And in the end, if we don't have a good public transit system, then we'll all have total gridlock. I'm sure some of your constituents don't care about better bus system or think it has nothing to do with them because they don't use it. There might be some who are totally against public transit or have it as a low priority. But there's a heck of a lot of us who do care about it and use it. And there's many who need it and depend on it, and a lot have no other means of travel. We can and do encourage citizens to vote for those who have a vision for a healthy, robust bus system, and those who would actually put that vision into action and make it a number one budget priority when they get into office. But their ideas and motions get voted down, and they can't do much if their ideas and motions get voted down. And if those candidates don't get into office because of the first-past-the-post system, the votes for nominees who would make busing a priority don't get heard. I don't have an answer to that. But I know that there's been a number of people around this table, past and present, who have said they support the notion of busing and public transit. And a lot of you have been actively working to move us towards that, and I appreciate that. Words are awesome, vision is great, and reports are very helpful. But I think we all know that if adequate money was budgeted for busing and put into public transit 10 years ago, and even before that, you wouldn't have this many people here now describing the ongoing issues that plague it. Thanks for listening.
Thank you, Marcia. No requesters at this time. Thank you very much, Marcia, for your presentation. As I'm calling Hans Jensen to the floor, please, I'm just going to each time ask if Ryan Plastide has shown up. Does Ryan just give a wave? Nope, Ryan hasn't yet. After Hans Jensen, if you just want to get ready, the next one is I have Ian Borsek. So if Ian's in the gallery, just to get ready in after Hans is completed. Hans, nice to see you. Welcome to the chamber in the next 5 minutes. Yep. The floor is yours.
Okay, thank you. My name is Hans Jensen, and I'm a homeowner and taxpayer in the city, and I expect to get as much out of my money as I can. Now, we don't want to pay too much for everything. I've been on the road most of my life. I worked for 32 years for Hamilton Street Railway, for information. I'll tell you one thing. In the next few years, we expect the road traffic is going to be even worse than today. We expect there will be twice as many gasoline-powered cars in this community. Therefore, we must prepare ourselves. And I trained in defensive driving. I trained in skid control. And at no time would I consider Red Hill Expressway a safe road. There is problems with them. And I can point them out. I can take it down and show you how poor designed it is anytime you want. For professional drivers like me, I can handle it. But for people who are not familiar, it's different. Okay? Now, in Montreal and in Toronto, they have a residential street. They're one-way street for the safety of pedestrians. And they have bus lanes. Okay? I've been asking for bus lanes for years in the city of Hamilton, so we can get the buses moving. But what have we got? No bus lanes yet. Now, there's another thing is, on street parking is a problem, because lots of kids get hit because they go in between parked cars and get hit by cars. Therefore, street parking, I requested for years ago, it must be away from parking on the street. So that's another thing we have to look at. And on two ways, if you're coming and driving up a two-way street and you're driving and make a left turn, you cannot see the pedestrian crossing the street because it's in your dead spot right on the corner there. And therefore, it should be banned left turn on all two-way streets, or else we should make one-way. Now, this is some of the problems I have. When I started working for HSS, I started reporting police officers for traffic violations. I had talked to Arno, and we brought them on the event. He decided to call them in and put them for driving tests. It was surprised how many police officers failed. That was pretty good for me. And we had lots of other problems. well, first of all, I like to see police officers get more power. Okay? You say, why would I do it? Sure, we need powers. Police need powers because they are the one who keep the law. And they're the one who is responsible for we are safe. Okay? And stop talking about against police officers. Okay? Now, I think police officers should start using drones instead of following cars. So let the drone follow the car down there. They won't know it, they're followed, and they can be caught. Okay? Another thing I like drones to be used for, if there an accident, if anything happened on the road or anywhere, or a break and enter comes, send a drone out before you send a police car out. They can see what's going on. Okay? Those are the things I would like to see about the police department. And I would like the police department start stopping cars, start to stop cars for checking them for whether they've been smoking high on weed. In Denmark, you get a license suspension of 2 years if you get caught smoking weed and get impaired by that. Now, I want to the police, they can do it in Denmark. They can check them. Why can't they do it in Canada? It become legal now. And it's not safe for us on the road if too many people get on the road like that. So this is one thing I'm worried about. Now, I will tell you how I came to HSR. In Denmark, I had gone to public transit school. I had my own business, running wholesale and taxi business. So I went down to HSR and said, okay, I'll go down and work for HSR. Why not? And I came down to HSR. I was happy to come to HSR. I come in there, and right away they knew where I was to start me. Right away, and as soon as I started, the passenger was saying, what a smooth operator you are. And the spectator, even after a few months, for an editorial, how well and what a good operator I was and how professional I dealt with the case. So this is my start there. I was happy to see the PS chart be the general manager. The system was running good. There was buses waiting downtown, and whenever a bus was late, okay, they put another bus in there, and if there was overload, put another bus in. This was the way the system was running. This is the way it should be running today. Okay? This is just to let you know some of the things.
1 minute left, Mr. Jones.
1 minute left.
1 minute, please.
Yeah, I know. Anyway, this is what we were offered. Since the old trial left, there was a bad. They constantly gone down the hill. We were offered a subway and high-level transportation here by this governor man. And what happened? The gentleman didn't want them, and HSR union didn't want them. They were afraid of they would cost too many passengers would lose jobs. We were offered full regional services. All buses and everything would be paid by the taxpayer of the province of Ontario, and they would pay all lost money for the first year. I was very disappointed. They were turned down too. We could have the best transit system today if we had not half a bad management. I think it's time we get rid of the bad management and get something done. And we don't need too many executive and all those kind of things. I know you want me to get out, so I'll just get out here. I think I got most of it said.
Thank you, Mr. Jansen. Thank you very much. Appreciate your presentation. And thank you for your 32 years of service. Thank you for your 32 years of service with the HSR. No questions or comments of Mr. Jensen at this time, so thank you, Hans. Next, Ian Borsek. Here he is. Ian's coming down, and Ian is next to speak and wanted to speak primarily about the 2018 budget, I believe. Ian, welcome. The next 5 minutes, and the floor is yours.
Anyways, thank you, Deputy Mayor. Thank you, Mayor and Council. As always, it's a lot less scary to meet with you one-on-one, and then getting up here, my mind goes blank a little bit. But leading up for this presentation, I was really torn about what I wanted to speak with. I knew Carl and Craig, as well as Don, were going to be bringing a lot of objective numbers and data forward that I think is really important. I was even contemplating just simply screenshotting the tweets from the HSR account from this morning of the canceled buses, which I don't know if anyone around the table knows how many there were, but there was 7 canceled buses this morning alone. But really what I want to talk about is 2 things and where Environment Hamilton's coming from, where we're advocating for fixing the HSR. The first one is last year the decision to defer the 10-year transit strategy. Ultimately, I just want to remind Council that The 10-year transit strategy was developed as a means of supporting the Rapid Ready Plan, which, as we now know, is the LRT. If we're not investing dollars at the right time and we're not preparing for the LRT, the ridership's not going to be there. We know that. That was said by previous staffers. And ultimately, what I'm also concerned about was that during the operations budget, there was a discussion around PTIF funding not necessarily being on time yet again, and then the idea of other deferments being potentially acceptable in the future. Unlike some other folks who have presented already, I do completely agree that both the province and the federal government should be contributing more dollars to the transit system here in Hamilton and nationally as well. But I want to see Hamilton City Council advocate for that on behalf of not only Hamilton, but the rest of the cities across this country. And Environment Hamilton would be more than willing to join in on that advocacy effort. But really putting this into perspective, and I'm really happy that actually no one touched on it because you guys are seeing a variety of presentations today, is 2 slides that was presented to the Board of Health on October 16th last year, which was midway through the beginning of the HSR crisis where we had over 1,000 hours of missed service. I don't want to necessarily dwell on this too long, but as we can see here, greenhouse gas emissions in Hamilton are they're decreasing, except for in one sector, and that's transportation. This was a really, great wake-up call for me as an environmentalist, as someone who's the climate campaign coordinator in Environment Hamilton, in seeing this is our problem area. Why aren't we tackling this? And as a lot of people say, well, it might be the trucks, it might be airport, but as you were also shown on October 16th by city staff, is that it's light road vehicles that are the major culprit of these greenhouse gas emissions. This is where we're seeing Hamilton fall behind on our commitments in terms of addressing climate change as a city. And this isn't light road vehicles as in motorcycles. These are just single occupant cars that are dominating our city, and we're not providing the choices to Hamiltonians to take transit properly. And so I just wanted to present that as a means of contextualizing where Environment Hamilton's coming from and in terms of our advocacy efforts. And I just wanted to encourage Council to really put into perspective what a real delay to the 10-year transit strategy did last year and what we need to do to get ready for both the LRT, but also get ready for making an impact on climate change in our city and federally as well. Anyways, thank you guys.
Thank you, Ian. Thank you for representing a fine agency in town, Environment Hamilton, started by Dr. Linda Lukaszek. Well done. No requesters or questioners at this time. Thank you, Ian. Speaking of the Lukaszek name, well, now hold it. That's not Mrs. Jeanette Lukaszek, but I know that this is a member of the Lukaszek family, and with committee's indulgence and flexibility, we'll allow Dr. Linda Lukaszek to represent Mrs. Jeanette Lukaszek. How does that sound, Linda?
Thank you, Councillor Jackson.
Welcome. The floor
Deputy
is yours.
Mayor. Thank you so much, Deputy Mayor and Mayor Eisenberger and members of Council for the opportunity to speak today. I am not Jeanette Lukaszek. She's my mother, and she sends her apologies. She wanted to be here today to speak. We practiced her speech on the phone last night, but she's sick today, so she really regrets missing this would have been her first delegation to all of you. But she did email me her speaking notes, and I told her that I would share those with you. So
Perfect. Thank you.
Here goes. I'll skip the part where she says, "My name is Jeanette Lukaszek." But these are her words. I am a proud, lifelong Hamiltonian. I should note she's a Ward 6 resident as well since 1960. I am also a longtime supporter of public transit in our wonderful city. When I was a child, many years ago, my mother would give me enough money to cover my fare on the trolley bus to downtown, with some left over to buy New York-style cheesecake from the Health Bread Bakery across from Eaton's. That was my first experience with public transit. I enjoyed the sense of freedom it gave me. It was also the only mode of getting around the city for our family. When I eventually attended McMaster and Teachers College, I continued to depend on Hamilton's public transit system. A forward-looking city, as Hamilton intends itself to be, must have a dependable, fully funded system that serves the needs of all of its citizens. I cannot speak to Vision Zero or to transit as a strategic asset. I leave that to others more knowledgeable than I in those areas. I can, however, speak as a citizen and taxpayer who, along with many others, depends on a reliable public transit system. Such a system must suit the needs of all and be of a quality that encourages rather than discourages those of us who would use it out of choice or out of need. It is incumbent on our City Council to regard public transit not as unimportant, to be set aside as has been done with the 10-year transit strategy and the continued neglect of the HSR, but as an essential service. A properly funded, even dare I say, encouraged public system would repay the city tenfold if properly implemented and funded. The Swedish transportation model has proven this to be true. I encourage City Council to take an interest in improving the system we have. Buses that arrive when they are supposed to, and more buses added to specific routes to alleviate overcrowding would be a great start. An FYI to Council, not every Hamiltonian owns a car. Some of us who do still prefer to take a bus. We just want funding to provide better service. Thank you.
Well done. Thank you, Linda, for presenting on behalf of Jeanette. Please wish her speedy recovery. I see no questioners at this time, so thank you, Linda. Much appreciated. And last on the delegation list is Tracy Smoke. Tracy, welcome. Come on down to the podium. And you're representing the Victoria Gardens Long-Term Care Facility, I believe. And you wanted to primarily speak to the DARTS presentation and the DARTS buses. Tracy, welcome. The next 5 minutes, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Deputy Mayor, Mayor, Councillors, committee members. I am the Activity Director at Victoria Gardens, which is home to 76 residents, and I've been there for the past, dare I say, 22 years. I also am part of a larger group of activity directors in the Hamilton, Waterdown, Stony Creek, and Castor area, who also relies on DARTS for many of our group trip and outings. I'm somewhat disappointed and surprised that Mr. Mindorf actually left this meeting at 3:38 this afternoon. But anyways, we'll continue. I've asked to attend this meeting because we feel it's important to advocate for the residents of the nursing homes, of the residents in the nursing homes. We rely heavily on DARTS for transportation for group outings. There are over nearly 4,000 residents living in long-term care in the Hamilton region, and on average, homes arrange for 3 community outings per month, with more during the summer months. Mr. Mindorf, in his presentation, had suggested that group trips in nursing homes were was a low passenger need in the DART system. This is mainly due to the frustration of the program managers in booking DARTs. If we had easier access to the accessibility of the buses and the scheduling, we would have more outings. Part of aging and successfully that we're in agreement for the City of Hamilton to age successfully, one of those things should be able to maintain your links and your involvement in your community. And with nearly 80% of nursing home residents being in wheelchairs, DARTs and accessible transportation is a huge factor. We're requesting that the city maintain some of the larger ARBOC buses in their fleet to accommodate these large group trips. When we do large group trips to, say, the Y Outreach program, which operates approximately 6 months of the year, and about 12 nursing homes attend the program weekly, we go from one central location to a second central location. We're not doing from one appointment to another appointment to a shopping mall. We're doing 8 residents from one place going 8 residents being dropped off at a central location. We're requesting that these ARBOC buses be given priority availability for booking group trips. No sense having the ARBOC buses in the fleet, but then when we call to do a group booking, it not be available and 2 ProMaster buses show up at our front door. The new ProMaster buses hold a maximum of 2 residents, and they have a challenge as far as accessibility on the inside of these buses. The inside of these buses, as you saw in a picture as well, it's very important, and it's on the back of my handout, It's an elevated step, and for residents that have vision impairments, gait, problems with their gait and their mobility, or even Alzheimer's residents who have problems with depth perception, this elevated step up into this narrow seat to get into is very challenging and a potential safety risk. Again, we're requesting that you retain some of the ARBOC buses in the fleet, which can accommodate more than 2 wheelchairs. As Councillor Partridge mentioned earlier, yes, the ProMaster bus is half the price, but also accommodates half the number of residents.
Please. Thank you. Thank you. Carry on, Tracy.
That's okay. I'm almost finished. Yeah, so basically it's just the accessibility of these ProMaster buses. If we could maintain some of the ARBOC buses into the fleet for nursing homes to have access to maintain linkages and partnerships with community, allowing residents to go into the community and having it available to them.
Thank you very much, Tracy. And if you would stay there, please. I know Councillor Partridge has been beating the drum strongly for long-term care facilities like yours and your situation. Councillor Partridge?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. And Tracy, thank you for your presentation. You mentioned 4,000 residents in long-term care facilities. And is that throughout the City of Hamilton?
That's through the City of Hamilton. Not all of the long-term care homes rely on DARTs for transportation. Some of them do have their own transportation.
Thank you. And Deputy Mayor, so that, you know, it raises the question, though, because there are also retirement homes that do use.
Yes.
And so my question to you, Tracy, is approximately how many homes would you say there are? You work in the industry, so I'm assuming that you have a rough number in your head across the city?
Yeah, I'm going to say over 20, plus retirement homes. I'm not too sure on the number of retirement homes. But I would say there's over 20 nursing homes. Like you've got Victoria Gardens, Grace Villa, Parkview, Alexander Place, St. Peter's, Village of Wentworth Heights, Macassa, Wentworth Lodge, Heritage Green, Pine Villa, Arbor Creek. Like I can go on.
Yeah, and there's Dundas as well.
Yes, Blackadar.
My father is in Dundas Retirement Place, and there's others there. And you know, I would say 20 is probably on the low side. But I, Deputy Mayor, was a little bit surprised. And unfortunately, Mark isn't here, but I was a little bit surprised in the presentation. In one of the answers to the questions I asked, I thought I heard him say that there were not that many calls to long-term care facilities or to retirement homes for outings for the buses.
In the winter it's lower because of the winter and just the weather with the potential risk of colds and flus and getting out and accessibility and snow.
Yeah.
But we would like to have more community outings, but to tell you the truth, it's frustrating. It's frustrating to call and just you call the day before and you just hope that the bus you requested is the bus that's going to be arriving. But you heard, and we've been to the ATS sub-review committee in November. I had other colleagues that attended in January. Their plan is to remove all the ARBOC buses from the fleet. Our request is that just some of them remain in the fleet and be accessible for large group trips to go out and remain active in the community.
Well, Mr. Deputy Mayor, I certainly appreciate Tracy coming in and doing the presentation on behalf of, I understand, on behalf of the other facilities that are in your industry. And I am going to be speaking with staff and with Councillor Jackson as well, and we'll work on this just to see what indeed we can do, because I do see it. I do see it as a significant issue, and you know, dealing more. We all have aging parents, and of course, as they get into those years,
we're aging ourselves. Never mind aging parents.
Yeah. Well, anyway, so you know, it's the whole senior issue is of absolute importance to many of us around this table. So I will commit to following up with staff on that, just to see what we could do. We have to do something. We just have to do something. It is not worth one of our seniors being put even at small risk of a trip or a fall, which, as you mentioned, with Alzheimer patients,
Yes.
it can be quite significant. So I just want to say thank you very much to you and to everyone else who came in today and took the time, to present to us. Thank you.
Thank you for your support.
Thanks, Councillor Partridge. Thank you, Tracy. Much appreciated. Okay, one last call for Ryan. Plastid, is it? Plastid? Ryan wanted to speak about the HSR buses. Okay, going once, twice, three times. That's the end of the formal official delegation speakers list. Members of committee then can have a motion to receive all of them for the record with all their information taken under advisement. Councillor Green, Mayor Eisenberger, all in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried. Thank you, anyone. And I want to acknowledge the President of the ATU, Eric Tuck, for being here as well from the HSR. Thanks, Eric. Okay, discussion items, members of committee, and we are marshalling our way through the budget through the month of March, everyone, so please stay tuned. Okay, we have the Conservation Authority, 5.1, regarding the levies. What is the committee's wish? Get on the speakers list if you have any questions or comments. Okay. 1 second, please. Councillor Green on 5.1, Conservation Authorities.
Is there anybody here that's able to speak to this or to take this?
I think General Manager Zagarek will try. Councillor Green?
Okay.
So through you, Mr. Deputy Mayor, committee may recall through the boards and agency delegations that a number of the conservation authorities came forward that given the decision by the Deputy Lands and Mines Commissioner regarding the Niagara Peninsula Conservation Authority's apportionment, that the boards, the Conservation Authority boards were revisiting the City of Hamilton's 2018 apportionment. Also recognizing the fact that City Council has approved direction to City staff that we appeal and ask for judicial review of the Deputy Commissioner's decision, is that the 2018 changes in apportionment would require appeal. And under the Conservation Authority Act, councils can appeal the apportionment. You cannot appeal the levy, but you can appeal the apportionment. You have to do so 30 days after receiving notice. And this is the urgency of this letter is City staff require direction to appeal those apportionments, subject to awaiting a decision with respect to the judicial review. We would appeal the GRCA, the Halton Conservation Authority apportionments, and by default we would have to appeal the Hamilton Conservation Authority apportionment.
Mr. Deputy Mayor, and I appreciate the willingness for me to go on the record about this. In doing some background on the MPCA, I understand their former CAO, Andy Burt, did the calculation. He actually looked at each property and property class in the Hamilton portion of the watershed. MPACT helped with this work. Then they took those property values of just the watershed properties in Hamilton and Haldimand and all the property values in Niagara and determined the percentage of the assessment. So while there might be hundreds of acres of land in Hamilton in the watershed because it's agricultural, that value is much lower than the same area in the downtown and urban areas. So the approach by the new CAO, Carm, he took into value the lands in Hamilton and simply takes a percentage of all the assessments. This skewed our payment because there's much more valuable properties in downtown that aren't part of the watershed and paying a percentage of the MPCA expenses. They should be therefore paying zero. So it's an issue for all of us across the city, and it's an interpretation that's a distinction between the past CAO and the present CAO and how they determine the assessments. And so I'm stating this on the record today because I'm hopeful that in our appeals that we look at what the historical reference is and we're arguing that accordingly in the courts as it relates to our assessments strictly in the watershed versus the total assessments of the municipality. So just through you to Nicole, has that been our position all along? Because that seems to be the substantive change in the way that these guys are calculating our money.
City Solicitor, Ati?
Sorry, through you, Deputy Mayor. Yes, certainly that historical distinction and the historical record was a significant part of our decision, or our arguments before the tribunal. And we still lost? Yes, certainly the tribunal didn't take that evidence and that argument. That's part of the reason why we are appealing it, and certainly we believe that's important to move on through the judicial review process.
Okay, because I know other municipalities in the region are also looking at the way they did that bait and switch, and I just want to make sure that we were on the record and that was clear as the distinction between the past CAO, Andy Bird, and the way that CARM ran it. So with that being said, those are my comments. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Green. I have Mayor Eisenberger, please.
Just to support recommendation 5.1, which is really in essence to follow up on our own judicial review and ensure that any other additional payments that we make, and unfortunately we're required to make them, that we do them on the same basis that we make them on when we made the payment to the Niagara Peninsula Conservation Authority. So I'm fully supportive of this. This is the way to go, notwithstanding in my mind, the ridiculousness of the argument that we ought to be paying for the entire city of Hamilton as opposed to what's actually in the watershed. Notwithstanding, the judicial review will hopefully sort that out. But in the meantime, any additional claims that are being made from conservation authorities, we ought to be paying in protest, to ensure that we protect our position to pull that back when the decision changes. I will move this at the appropriate time, Mr. Chair.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Much appreciated. Councillor Partridge, please.
Yes, thank you, Deputy Mayor. And through you...
Hey, folks, we're almost near the end, please. Keep the sidebars to a low volume. Councillor Partridge.
Thank you. Through you to Mike, was also the bigger issue, though, not the fact that there was...
The chair is listening, Councillor Partridge.
With due respect, I need more than the chair to listen, although I do appreciate...
Meeting, so I'm listening intently, Councillor Partridge.
So through you to Mike. Mike, I also understand, though, that was there not a broader issue in that there was an agreement that was being used by all conservation authorities and the City of Hamilton, but that agreement was never formalized through our individual councils. Was that also a bigger part of the issue?
So through you, Mr. Deputy Mayor, there were two parts to the city's position. One was the agreement, and that was specific to Niagara Peninsula Conservation Authority's 2015 apportionment. We were arguing that there was a practice, an agreement involving the City of Hamilton and the respective conservation authorities for well over a decade. And to the other argument was the issue regarding levying only the assessment within the respective watersheds. So I think that was the argument that Councillor Green was alluding to. So again, Councillor Partridge, you're right. There were two issues that the city brought forward. One was the agreements involving the conservation authorities in City of Hamilton. Having said that, the one challenge with respect to those agreements, you may recall during boards and agencies, is the regulation would suggest that if an agreement was to be formed going forward, it would require all parties agreeing, and that would involve, in the case, I believe, of GRCA, Grand River Conservation Authority, I think that would involve somewhere in the area of 21 municipalities agreeing, and so that would represent a challenge going forward in terms of reaching such an agreement going forward as it relates to trying to negotiate a revised apportionment.
I appreciate that, Mr. Deputy Mayor. I appreciate the explanation, because this really is not, just, it's much bigger than just the 4 conservation authorities that are here. It then feeds into the 21 municipalities or partners that would need to be in the agreement. That's just within Grand River. Halton, I don't know how many are in there, but certainly I attended Halton's AGM. The other last week, and they did include this particular issue in their presentation for their next year's budget going forward and for their 2018 work plan. So, you know, it is something that is going to hit us and is coming at us very fast and very furious. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Partridge. Some of the noise chatter was coming from our engaged citizens who are still in the lobby as well. Okay, no further questions. Moved by the Mayor, seconded by Councillor Conley. All in favour? Any opposed? Motion carried. Notices of motion. I hear or see none. Motion to adjourn. Councillor Aidan Johnson. Councillor Brenda Johnson. All in favour? Any opposed? Motion carried. Well done, everyone. Thank you.